Get a cup, get a cup, get a cup. Hello, hello. Welcome back, everyone, to another video on Fresh Cut Slim, and today I'm reacting to Worst Times to Be Alive by Tommy NFG. Now, this was recommended to me, well, this channel was, and yeah, with that being said, let's find out when the worst time to be alive was. I think all throughout human history, up until, like, 1980 would probably be a horrible time to be alive. And even in the 80s, we didn't have computers. So maybe like 2000, the year 2000 was like the peak time to be alive, I think. I don't know. Let's go.
The world is facing a massive turmoil all around it, and people aren't really happy with things like wars that don't need to be happening.
Bye-bye, Russia!
That's all throughout human time, though. Like, let's not think that random wars that may be going on now are a one-off, you know? Wars have been going on all throughout human history.
Inflation that turned a Little Caesars pizza from $5 to $10. It don't even be tasting good enough for this price. Little Caesars, y'all know you're wrong for this. People barely...
Yeah, it don't. To be fair, in the 1970s to like the early 1980s, there was bad inflation. So this stuff's not new. We're just, you know, a lot of us are just young enough to not have experienced any of it.
Being able to afford to live. But all things considered, we're probably at the best moment in humanity compared to other times. Which is why we're going to be looking at the
worst times to be alive.
Starting off with none other than caveman times. The name of it in general gives it away. Caveman times. Them had to live in caves to survive the nights for slumber. Like, we consider the least you can have in life is shelter. Their shelter was a damp cave with all types of insects and bats flying around. You could barely around and risk sleeping because a 20-foot spider might bite your nuts off while you sleep. And could you imagine how sleeping in the winter would have been like? I know that rock bed felt like ice cubes. The typical day for a cave...
Yeah, definitely would not have been ideal. Definitely would not have been ideal. But I'll tell you what, though. It's definitely a simpler life. The lives that we live now are so complicated. Compared to back then, where it's hunt, survive, that's it. And reproduce. That's the best part. But, you know what I mean?
Man is waking up and hoping you weren't eaten by either a saber-toothed tiger, a woolly mammoth, or Elon Musk. Then you had to go out and actually hunt for your food. And unless you're the liver king and hunting bulls then throwing a testes in your breakfast cereal, you probably don't do this. And the worst part too is that their weapons weren't even that good. Like, what did they have? Spears, bows and arrows, hammers? We use that shit in Minecraft now to survive. A spear or bow was probably cool to get a little bird or fox, but what the is it gonna do against the Gigantocopatic? Okay, I'm not gonna try to pronounce his name, but this big...
Yo, his last name's Blackie? What the frig?
Ape, an extinct species of ape that were 10 feet tall and weighed over 1,000 pounds. This must be the primate Shaq comes from, because ain't no way, dog. You're gonna need about 1,000 thousand arrows to take one of these down. Imagine these lived in modern times with us. The NBA would be paying top dollar to get one of them on their team. But nowadays, we could see one of these creatures and be like, damn, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And boom, the species would be gone. You also gotta factor in weather too, because unlike today's tools where we can predict when anything is gonna happen,
I mean, how accurate is the weather prediction stuff anyway? I mean, maybe with AI it's going to get better, but, you know, up until 2015, the weather reports kind of like a vague guess on what might happen.
Before they had to take a gamble if their village was going to be up or taken by a tsunami in the middle of the night. I would turn into a villain if I woke up and the whole village was swept away except for me. And people talk about lifespan being low before modern medicine in the past, but imagine in caveman times. They'd be lucky if they celebrated their 18th birthday. Doing my...
That's probably very accurate, because like even if you think of medieval times, the lifespan wasn't what it is now. People would die from getting a nail, or from, you know, from like tetanus, or from people would die from like these diseases that we can easily treat nowadays.
Inquisiting research with asking a question on Google. The average caveman lived to 20 to 25 years old, man. He was already considered unk at 12 years old. A caveman could just catch the common cold and everyone in the village already knew it was GG's. If my caveman homie caught the cold and gave it to me, I'm gonna have to spear his ass first before the cold takes him. Plus, since there was no hygiene like a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, they were dying to basic things we prevent nowadays like tooth infections and ass AIDS.
Did he just say ass AIDS? What?
Well, I don't know about ass AIDS, but a leaf to wipe your ass had to have not been held. But the main reason I couldn't live back then, quite frankly, is because
no internet.
Everyone was ugly as Like, how am I supposed to be on my Kai Cenat, Duke Dennis, looks maxing, edge mewing, joking type of timing when I look like this? I just keep bashing my face against the wall and hope my proportions smooth out better like handsome Squidward. The next time we got is the medieval times. Now there's a...
Medieval times, people lived longer than 25. But I think the average age probably was maybe in like the 50s or 60s.
Obvious reason I wouldn't...
But that's a huge jump. Going from cavemen to medieval, that's a huge jump in the time span.
Survive because, well, let's just say I wouldn't be allowed in the town with the regular folks. But it's not like I'd want to because was not fun. Like, I know I already talked about hygiene with the caveman, but holy at least they died early. There were actual old people in the medieval times. Back then, they used to actually think it was healthier to not shower. Scientists were not the brightest creatures. They thought diseases were caused by smells, and if you took a shower, it opened up the pores for the disease to enter your body, which has got to be...
Is that real? Like, I know they think that it had something to do with smell, like, because, you know, during the Black Plague, those weird masks, they would stuff with, like, flowers and stuff because it would have a nice smell, and to my understanding, that they thought that would help prevent them from getting the plague.
Be the dumbest conclusion ever, but hey, that's what you get on a diet of stale bread and moldy cheese. I also like me a nice toilet with the sea-ass temp set at 68 degrees Fahrenheit to set forth the environment for my bowels to erupt. But do you know what a medieval toilet looked like? It was a hole in the ground. And after people finished doing their business, they would just throw their outside. Imagine walking to school or work in the morning and you get hit by 5 pounds of diarrhea from above. And in medieval times, you better hope you don't get caught with doing a heinous act like being a traitor, being black, because their torture methods were out of pocket for no reason.
They were crazy. I remember going to some, like, medieval dungeon. I think it must have been a museum or something at some point. And it's just like the stuff that they did is insane. No respect or no love for humanity in what they did. Like, I understand if someone's a criminal, they should be punished. But for, like, some of the stuff that they did is a little bit much. You know? It's easier to chop someone's head off. And probably a lot faster and a kinder way to do that than to do some of the other things that they would do to people.
If you're tapped into the historical side of YouTube, you've already seen how wild they could get. And the names give them away of the torture devices. Like, what type of joist object would be called the breast ripper? The worst one to me is the rack, where they tied you to a mechanical device that rotates and slowly stretched out your body until every bone broke and you ripped in half.
Yeah, like, this seems a bit much, you know? If someone's a criminal or they did something that was, you know, something crazy, they murder or whatever, just, you know, take them out, easy peasy, and that's it. But doing this to someone's horrible. But I can't help admit that I think, you know, the days that your back aches, trying something like this where it just pulls out, I'll just not go all the way, but just, you know, a little pull on the back. Oh, it'd probably feel real good, you know?
If they bring this back as a torture method, never in my life am I even attempting to do the pettiest crime. I'm gonna be the most stellar citizen the government has ever seen. I'll always make sure to cross the street on a crosswalk, and I'll always make sure to go exactly the speed limit, not risking And it's not like they even did it for only extreme criminals. If you simply had a different religious belief, they was finna call you a witch and put you on it pronto. Honestly, I don't even know why you would even tell them you have a different religious belief. Like, you just gotta be stupid. Also, people think politicians and world leaders are corrupt now, but could you imagine back then? You could probably give...
Yeah, could you imagine? People don't change. The one thing you'll learn, or you should learn in life, is that people have not changed. We have different technology than they did, you know, 200, 300, 400 years ago. But people in general have not changed. It's still the same crap, different generation.
Give a king the wrong look, and if he's already mad that day, he'll just send you to be executed. And if I was a king... honestly, I'd probably do that too. Like, if I see some dude in the kingdom that looks handsome and might be a threat to my pulling abilities, I'm gonna have him executed. Game is game. And it's not like anyone was going against...
I mean, to be fair, if you are the king and you see someone giving you a weird look, you might think that they're gonna try to take you out. And as the king, it kind of makes sense that you'd want to not allow that to happen. So that actually, I can forgive, because it kind of makes sense.
The king. If they tried, they would barely have a chance. You would try killing a king, a knight would stop you, then put you through the most excruciating torture to ever exist.
Take him to Detroit.
We also thought quarantine was bad and staying a year and a half or 2 years inside was excruciating. But in medieval times, they had the Black Plague, and yeah, we really shouldn't be complaining. You were waking up every...
Yeah, I think that wiped out, like, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's like a third of Europe or something like that. It wiped out so many people.
Every day, and bodies were dropping left and right like no tomorrow. One day it was your homie's grandmother gone. The next day it was your grandmother gone. This plague took out 50% of the population.
50? Oh, it's crazy.
Imagine right now we went from 8 billion to 4 billion. Honestly, I wouldn't mind some of y'all freaks being taken out, but 4 billion was a little too much for me, you know? And their plague was 7 years. Also, the doctors were
7 years is how long that was? That's crazy. I couldn't imagine 7 years. Like, imagine being cooped up in your house for 7 years. The only people at the end of the plague would be insane people. Everyone would be like, just cuckoo.
were not helping back then, because why did they choose this as their outfit? They look creepy as f. No way in hell I'm letting these dudes get near to help me with my medical predicaments. They couldn't have chose a scarier costume to go with. What were they thinking? Imagine being an innocent child and having the Black Plague, then this thing comes to aid and consulting you. I'ma just say my prayers to my Lord and Savior, then drop dead. The next times we got is segregation times. And if you're not of a melanated skin tone, well, congratulations. You get a one-time pass for this portion of the video to relive it. Let me give a shout out real quick to the GOATs. MLK, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X. Because without them, you wouldn't be watching this video of me. Either that or there would be a black-only YouTube and white-only YouTube. So
Could you imagine though? That'd be crazy.
I don't know, maybe you would be watching it. I would have been pissed off living back then because the hassle you had to get anything while segregated was absurd. Like, we already know everything was separated by black and white places only, but then imagine how many actual black businesses you could go to. The hassle you had to go through alone to be able to open a business was almost impossible. As soon as they saw the race listed on the business application, you know they did not give a fuck. If you had to get a life-threatening surgery, you might as well just end it there because there were about 50 people in line in front of you. And even if you did manage to get something luxurious like a car back then, you was getting pulled over every time you drive. You probably couldn't even use the car at nighttime anyways because sundown towns. Which for y'all that don't know are towns that ban non-white people from coming in after sundown.
Is that a thing? That's nuts.
Imagine you don't know and randomly drive into the town a minute after sundown and catch a beating. I'd be pissed. And a beating is probably the lightest punishment they'd consider. I'd also be mad too because I wouldn't be able to talk to one of my white homies half the time. You couldn't hang out at the same school, hotels, bars, restaurants, parks, basically anywhere that was fun. The only place we would be able to talk is probably a damn grass field in the middle of Iceland. And if your love happened to be...
It's freaking crazy. You know what's even wilder? The fact that this, one, that it happened, but the fact that I've seen stuff recently where people are kind of wanting to go back to that, which is, what?
Of another race as well, they definitely not gonna let that pass. You finna get banished from the family. Why do you think you've never seen an old light-skinned person? Really question yourself. Have you ever seen an old light-skinned person? They wasn't breeding them until like 50 years ago. It wasn't allowed. Thank the heavens they allowed it, or else
they wasn't breeding them? Is that what he says?
We would have never gotten my pookie wookie trakey snakey. You could be walking down the street normally doing your own thing and randomly someone is calling you the hard R like it's Call of Duty. And unlike Call of Duty where you can talk back, you couldn't risk doing it because you know the cops are not taking your side. You getting a life sentence if you even think of speaking back. Crazy thing is, some people act like this was like 500 years ago or something. The Civil Rights Act...
No, like if you didn't know, Rosa Parks died in, I want to say, I could be off by a few years, between 1994 and like 2003. I think Rosa Parks, died within that, like around there, which is insane because when I first learned that, like I thought it would have been like in the 80s or something, but let me just check here to make sure I'm not actually a complete idiot. 2005. That's friggin' nuts, dude, because if that gives you any kind of inclination on or idea on how recent everything was, that 2005 is when YouTube was created. I think 2005 or 2006. So like that's freaking wild when you have to think about it.
That got passed 60 years ago. Some people alive were in their 20s, 30s, and 40s when it got passed. And of course, the last time we got is World War II because, no. Now, World War II was one of those times where every group had it bad. First, you had to get drafted to a war you didn't want to fight. Like, I don't got no problems with anyone. Why the f am I fighting? These presidents got to start fighting in a boxing ring or something because I'm not fighting with some problems you got. And patriotism went...
That's what I'm saying.
Extra crazy before because kids were dead ass lying to get drafted and fight for the country. I'm doing the exact opposite of this happen. Whatever means it takes to not be drafted, I'm doing it. If I gotta lie about my age,
I think to an extent, back in the 1940s or whatever, people, I think they probably had a lot more pride for their countries and they would be more willing to stand up and fight for it. But nowadays, where the cost of living compared to the 1940s, your dollar, the purchasing power has depreciated so much where you could, people on minimum wage can't live on that. If you make it good money, you still can't really live on that. Compared to 1940s, where you could work a minimum wage job and everything would be fine. You could buy a house, you could have a car and all that crap. So if you think of it, people back then it would make more sense for them logically to be willing to stand up for their country. Because there was something worth fighting for. For some reason, I just couldn't put that together in my head when I was filming. Back then, there was something worth fighting for. There was a way of living and a standard of living that had not really been achieved up until this point in human history, and it was worth fighting for. So it would make more sense why people would be willing to fight for it, to protect it. Like, that's at least how it makes sense to me.
Age and act 12 years old, I'm doing it. If I gotta go up in a political position and be safe, I'm doing it. If I gotta act like I'm sped for years, I'm doing it. And it's even
I don't even have to act.
worse for other wars like the Vietnam War. Because they would announce the draft picks on live TV, and whatever birthday it was, you were getting drafted. They treat it like it's the NFL or NBA draft. Imagine
What?
watching this live and
This is the worst bingo ever.
them going, okay, and the draft we have for the Vietnam War of 1972 is going to be... okay, I'm March 3rd. Please don't be me. Please don't be me. Please don't be me. March 4th. Oh! Guess I'm good after all. There's been a mistake in the announcement, but we meant March 3rd. Fuck! Patriotism really worked back then because all they knew was what the TV played and what the government said. Being on a warfield for months and not knowing when you're gonna either get sniped, hit by a 5-foot tank shell, captured by the enemy, and being tortured for weeks wasn't really the best living times for people. And if you were Japanese, well, I mean... you know how that story goes. Japan was ruthless.
Oh boy. I think the conclusion we can draw from this whole video is that at any given point in history, there's been horrible stuff going down, and you're very unfortunate if you're caught up in it. But also at the same time, at any given point in history, at some place in the world, things probably aren't that bad. So it all depends where you are. It depends on your spawn location.
Though, not gonna lie, but could you imagine you're drafted into the Japanese military and the job they assign you is as a kamikaze? There was no age limit.
Yeah, that's crazy. Talk about a waste of material. Like, do you know how much expensive these planes would be to build, right? And then you get one chance and you just fly it into something. Like, why didn't they strap bombs on them and stuff? I think that would probably be more effective. Like, you might get more use out of the plane rather than, just to crash it into the sea.
Limit to this job either. They gave this job to teenagers. Your fate is already destined that you're dying. What do you even do at that point?
Flee the country. I'll take this plane and fly to another country.
Like me would have to dip in the middle of the mission and just let the plane crash in the ocean. I feel like it would be way easier nowadays to get people to do it though. You could recruit by looking for some emo kids or a sad edit TikTok comment section, people that wouldn't mind losing their life anyways. And if you were Jewish, well, I mean... you also know how that story goes. And after being forcibly drafted to the war, you'd come back home and still be broke. With all that PTSD you got, it was probably hard to work any job. You couldn't work in a restaurant because you get PTSD from oil popping from the fryer. You couldn't work a factory job because you get PTSD from all the loud machines. You couldn't work as a corn star because you get PTSD from all the clapping. And even if you do get paid, it's barely
from all the clap. Oh yeah, it's probably true though. At least for a decent amount of people would probably have very hard time readjusting to society.
enough to scrap by. There's no reason we should have homeless veterans. So yeah, guys, even though the world isn't perfect and things seem like they're always getting worse, at least you didn't have to be a kamikaze pilot in World War II. I think that's the lesson here. Follow me on Twitter and...
Anyway, that's it for this video. I actually really liked it. I really liked it. I hope you guys did too. Maybe I'll react to some more Tommy NFG in the future. But yeah, I think, at all points in human history, something horrible has been going on, and it really depends where you live. But yeah, I hope you guys liked this video, and I think I'd rate this out of a 10. I don't know, it's my first Tommy video, and I liked it though, so I'll probably rate like an 8. But yeah, with that being said, I'll see you guys next time.